Here's the Google Trends graph for the search term Casio Tiffany Blue over the last 5 years. Yeah, this watch is super popular right now. Loads of reviewers seem to love the Casio Tiffany, especially TikTokers and YouTube Shorts creators. Okay, they haven't hyped it quite to the same level as the Moon Swatch yet, but even so, almost all Casio retailers are still sold out of this model many months after release. As a result, marketplace sites like eBay and Chrono24 are still packed with numbskull resellers attempting to shift these for multiple times the RRP. In some cases, for northwards of £370. Who's paying that for these? In some cases, for northwards of £370, which is almost $500 just for one unit. As you can probably guess, this watch isn't nearly worth those inflated figures. Nevertheless, is it worth joining one of the many pre-order lists for when this watch returns to stock at RRP? An RRP which is considerably lower than that. Well, surprisingly, I'm not sure it's such a foregone conclusion. You see, this watch, the Casio MTP 1302, is actually one I've covered before, but in an alternative guise. Aha! Yeah, this is also the MTP 1302 PD, just the grey version instead. I briefly showed this as an honourable mention back in my top 20 Casio roundup over 2 years ago. Overall, I thought it was a nice looking timepiece with a decent sunburst dial that was reasonably good value for money at the time. The crucial thing was, I paid barely anything for it. In fact, historically, this watch has sold for around, or often well under, £30 on Amazon over the last few years. That was until recently. With the hyping of the new turquoise Tiffany version, as well as inflation of course, all the colours have increased in price. By no stretch are these now super luxury expensive watches, but even at the original £45 price point, I'm not sure this is the killer deal many are claiming. And that's coming from me, a Casio fanboy. Now for many of you watching, I'm sure the still low £45 RRP will make price a complete non-concern. And if so, no worries, go and enjoy your Casio Tiffany. But if you're a Casio fan like me, I would maybe hesitate, because you may feel deflated when receiving this one. With Casio, we're used to getting the fun and friendly digitals for between a tenner and 40 quid. Anything above that is usually a noticeable step up in quality. This Casio Datejust doesn't quite follow that trend. It was built and designed to sell profitably for £30, and it shows. I've read numerous reviews proclaiming how well made this watch is. I think they're being way too lenient. Luckily, you can check out over 800 watch reviews on our partner site WatchCrunch. If you're after a variety of perspectives and opinions, WatchCrunch is the place to be. It's a new discussion platform created by watch lovers for watch lovers that promotes discussion and creativity, instead of negative bling culture. It's free to use, and you can ask any watch-related question you like to the rapidly growing community, and you'll get a multitude of honest answers within minutes. I use WatchCrunch to scout out new watches to add to my collection using the Discover tab, as well as the hashtags feature where you can essentially filter your feed to just see the topics that you're interested in. Create your own profile, show the world what watches you're wearing, and delve into the rabbit hole of brands both big and small, cheap or expensive. WatchCrunch's dedicated team is constantly rolling out new features. In fact, the mobile app just received a huge update for both iOS and Android. So come and join the community and start earning your unique badges by clicking the link in the video description. Thanks to WatchCrunch for sponsoring this video. Immediately out of the box, this one feels and looks a bit cheaper than you'd think, especially compared to some of Casio's other offerings such as the Edifice series or the underrated MTD 1053 dive watch, which both start at similar prices on most grey market sites like Amazon. The shiny dial on the grey version does somewhat redeem it, the same with certain other colours too, but for the most part, it's not far from your average grocery store watch, and it's certainly not up to Casio's usual standards. The bracelet feels light and jangly, though that's standard fare at this price. The more obvious issue is the main housing itself. You see, while some creators have said this is stainless steel, or failed to mention the materials entirely, the MTP 1302 is actually constructed of low-grade chrome-plated brass. Now for super cheap watches, which this watch used to be, this is understandably the material of choice, as it costs less to use than steel. That said, Casios have traditionally been stainless steel at this new price, which is where I think some people have slipped up. While it looks like steel at first, it's more reflective and has a slightly different hue than a steel case or bracelet, which becomes more evident when side by side with a proper steel timepiece. At a glance, you probably won't notice the difference, but in terms of performance, chromed brass will scratch more easily because it's softer, and it's also more susceptible to corrosion, so eventually the chromed layer will erode away in a similar manner to some bathroom fixtures. In essence, while the case looks nice now, it probably won't after a couple of years of regular usage. Battering around your plastic F91W makes sense, but this dressier watch will start to lose its inherent aesthetic function as the scratches and chips mount up. Up close, you'll see the details here aren't far from the likes of Movement or Daniel Wellington. The indexes are just bare-bone pieces of silver plastic. The Lume is about as useful as a bar of soap in prison. When the lights go out, you're done for. That said, it is a dressier style piece, so that's not hugely important. The turquoise blue dial is more tasteful than I expected. I've never tried a watch with this colour before, and while its implementation here is very plain, I can understand why this tone is so popular. There's a distinctive unisex appeal that isn't quite as garish as some other bright colours. As a whole, the Casio Datejust looks alright from a distance, but I do think the expensive lights and lenses that we use make this one look more premium than in person. It's fashionable, maybe, but it does look like a light blue £30 watch and nothing more. I don't want to be too harsh though. While we pride ourselves on our honesty here at Ben's Watch Club, we've also noticed that prices of even entry-level watches have been soaring since the pandemic, which inherently reduces your options if you're on a strict budget. For example, while I'm not very impressed with this Casio, the other Rolex Datejust clones I could find at this price were also made of low-tier brass or zinc alloy. Some steel watches from Casio are available for under £50, but nothing with comparable styling. I'm ill-equipped to judge how much of this is actually inflation, or how much is greedflation from a couple of naughty watch brands wanting to increase profits, but the same appears to be happening across the board with all affordable watchmakers, so it makes me think it's more likely the former. While the build isn't ideal, it does have some redeeming qualities. Mineral glass, while far from remarkable, is the industry standard crystal and is better than the plastic that you sometimes still see at this price. Another positive is surprisingly the movement. The quartz inside here is surprisingly quiet, much quieter than similar Timex watches which put your eardrums in danger. The hands are also fairly well aligned with the second markers on both colours that I've got here, so it's good to see Casio's QC department is still on track. While low quality, as you'd expect for this money, the included bracelet at least has 4 micro adjustment holes to ensure you'll find a decent fit. I'm sick of those clasps with fewer than 3 holes, which often relegates the whole bracelet to the trash unless you get fluky with the sizing. This one does have a tendency to kink up sometimes, so it isn't the best, but I have seen much worse. The water resistance is decent too. 50 meters or 5 bar is a figure sometimes bragged about by fashion brands as being revolutionary! Confusingly, this is not a 44mm watch as is listed on many sites. That's actually a reference to the lug-to-lug measurement of this Casio fake just. In terms of width, it's actually a much more compact 38.3mm with a thickness of just under a centimeter, so if you're expecting a large watch in the mail, you will be quickly disappointed. If you've got a particularly huge wrist, this will look dwarfed, but for most arms, this is a versatile size which isn't far off the sizing of some of the real Rolex Datejust models, if that's the look you're targeting. Basically, think twice before you go buying this watch, or even one of the other versions. It's not a scam watch, rather an underwhelming one which feels a little bit disposable by Casio's usual standards with these metal watches. You absolutely should not be paying the insane scalper prices, and even at retail price, by all means you can grab one, just don't let the hype affect your expectations. For a value rating at retail price, I'm going for exactly 6 out of 10 on the nose. At scalper prices though, it's a 0. For a style rating, let's go for a more reasonable 7.2. So, if you're not buying this, what should you buy instead? Well, here are a few that I'll also link to in the video description. If you want a straight up Rolex clone, then Pagani Design makes a bunch of them, including some in Tiffany style turquoise blue as well. The best value alternatives I've seen are those from Accurist. If you want to know more about Accurist, check out the video on screen now, where I take a look at one of their budget chronographs. They've got a surprisingly long history.